Profound connection. Without hesitation, I readily accepted the invitation to visit for the weekend with my wife. The allure of venturing into the backwoods, where a genuine Russian banya nestled within walking distance of the forest and a serene lake, had me intrigued. I anticipated returning home with a handful of captivating tales for my collection. However, as enjoyable as the vacation was, it seemed unlikely that I would uncover anything truly novel about the locals. I resigned myself to the idea that I would return home rested but unsatisfied, having failed to quench my curiosity about the people there. That was until Sunday evening, when Istalina Vasilievna, a neighbor of our friends, unexpectedly appeared on the doorstep of our lodging, marking the beginning of a remarkable encounter. The elderly woman, short and slightly hunched, opened the gate and, leaning on a cane, made her way towards the veranda where my friends and I were gathered. Our guests, Midia and Galia, greeted their neighbor from a distance and invited her to join us at the table. "Hello, everyone," the old woman greeted, approaching the veranda. "Gal, I would like to speak to your guest." "Bazilna, is something the matter?" Galina asked, clearly taken aback. "Melos, come here," the old woman said, addressing me and disregarding Galina's question. Intrigued, I rose from the table without hesitation and approached Istalina Vasilievna. She hooked her arm around mine and led me a little aside. "Melos, I thought you were heading back to the city tomorrow," the old woman said, looking directly into my eyes. "Yes, we are going home," I confirmed. "Please take me to the city, my dear son, I implore you. I have some money for the trip," Istalina Vasilievna said, her hands trembling as she pulled out a roll of money wrapped in a handkerchief from her pocket. "And if it's not enough, I can borrow from Galka. She won't refuse, my dear." "Istalina Vasilievna, please don't be so distressed. Put the money away. Why don't you tell me where you need to go? The hospital, perhaps?" I tried to clarify her request. "No, I need to visit my granddaughter," Istalina Vasilievna said, her eyes locked onto mine, filled with intensity and pleading. "She had a baby boy 6 months ago, and if I were to die tomorrow, I wouldn't have seen my great-grandson." With those words, tears welled up in the old woman's eyes. "And where does she live?" I continued gathering information. "I don't know, son, I don't know. I used to know, but I've forgotten everything. They live in the city with her husband." Istalina Vasilievna continued, tucking the roll of money away and retrieving an old button cell phone from the same pocket. "If you take me to the city, I can call my granddaughter and find out where to go." "Go ahead, make the call," I responded curtly. Without delay, the old woman dialed her granddaughter's number and began inquiring about the location. Then she handed me the phone, saying, "Here, son, I don't understand much. Let her explain to you." After obtaining the address and assuring them of our arrival the next day, I said goodbye to Anya and returned the phone to its owner. "But you must take me there and bring me back," Istalina Vasilievna said, clutching my hand once again. "I can't be away for too long. I have a hen and 2 rabbits. I only wish to lay eyes on my great-grandchild. I will take you there and bring you back," I reassured her. "We will leave tomorrow morning." Istalina Vasilievna visibly brightened, bidding farewell to everyone on the veranda with cheery waves, and she walked toward the gate as best The following morning, around 8 a.m., my wife and I received a warm send-off from our friends. Istalina Vasilievna sat on a bench in front of Galia and Midia's yard, ready to embark on our journey. Compared to the previous day, she appeared more spruced up, and a large canvas bag, likely filled with provisions, rested beside her on the bench. 10 minutes later, we set off towards the city, engaging in a pleasant conversation with the visibly anxious Istelina Vasilyevna. Along the way, she shared that her granddaughter, Anechka, now 27 years old, had been practically raised by her since birth. Anechka's mother, Olia, Istelina Vasilyevna's daughter-in-law, had struggled with infertility for a long time. Istelina Vasilyevna did her best to comfort and support Olia, assuring her that sometimes it takes time to conceive. While not at the age of 40, like herself, Olia finally became pregnant at 24. The news brought immeasurable joy to their family. But then, Olia tragically passed away while giving birth to Anechka. Istelina Vasilyevna's son, devastated by the loss of his wife of 20 years and uncertain about raising the newborn alone, left his job in the city and returned to his mother in the village. 5 years later, Istelina Vasilyevna discovered her son's lifeless body hanging in the barn. I raised Anechka as my own daughter, providing her with everything. Istelina Vasilyevna shared as we approached our destination. As she grew older, I urged her to leave the village and pursue an education in the city. Her parents had left her an apartment there, which we rented out and used as our source of income. My Anechka found a husband. She brought him to visit me once. He's a handsome man, although a bit older for Anechka. Nowadays, we only communicate over the phone. I understand that she can't travel with a child. Leaving my wife at home, it was just Istelina Vasilyevna and me on the return journey. When we arrived at our destination, we called once again to confirm the intercom number and floor. The reunion between Anya and her grandmother overflowed with warmth, and we were swiftly ushered from the vestibule into the apartment. After informing Anya that her grandmother had been safely delivered, I assured her that I was prepared to pick Istelina Vasilyevna up later that evening. Anya and I exchanged phone numbers, with her promising to call me when she was ready to collect Istelina Vasilyevna. Around 6 in the evening, I found myself standing outside Anya's residence once more, pressing the intercom button. To my surprise, instead of simply retrieving the old lady and heading back, the door swung open, and I was invited to come inside. I had assumed that I would be in and out quickly. However, upon stepping out of the elevator onto the desired floor, I was greeted by a middle-aged man, approximately 45 years old. "Ivan Petrovic?" he asked with a smile. "You can simply call me Petrov." At first, I found it peculiar that Kirill referred to Anya and Istelina Vasilyevna as girls. However, everything started to make sense when 2 other women emerged from the apartment. One, Marina, appeared to be around Kirill's age, while the other, Sveta, seemed to be in her mid-30s. They had been hiding behind the front doors, only to reappear with bowls of salad and decanters of compote. As the scene unfolded, children also entered the picture. Denis, a 10-year-old boy, called Sveta Mama, and Dima, who was in his 20s, turned out to be Marina's son. The situation became increasingly perplexing as we all gathered around the table. We didn't expect guests, so our dinner is just a regular one, not a festive occasion, Kirill explained while serving salad onto a plate. "Petrovic, care for a drink?" "I'm driving," I replied, surprised by the offer. "Right. I forgot. I'm more of a pedestrian. I don't have a car. If I did, I would have brought our dear Istelina Vasilyevna to visit," Kirill chuckled. "Daddy, when will my grandmother come?" Denis inquired. "My grandmother visited Matvey, but she hasn't come to see me." "Your grandmother just visited you recently, and soon you'll go to see her." Matvey's grandmother came for the first time. "Now, eat up," Kirill calmly reassured him. "And you should consume more carbohydrates." Kirill turned to Dima. "Otherwise, you'll be all skin and bones, and the girls don't like that." As the conversations at the table carried on, I felt increasingly trapped. I struggled to understand who was who and what was happening. The situation started to become clearer when I finally had a chance to speak with Carol alone. While the girls cleared the plates and prepared for dessert, Carol and I stepped out onto the balcony for a smoke. "Listen, Carol, forgive me, but I'm a bit confused about something," I began, feeling a hint of embarrassment. "What do you mean, Petrovic?" Carol asked,
"Well,
smiling.
It's about them."
I nodded towards the room. "I mean..." "Ah, you mean this," Carol interjected with a good-natured smile. Perhaps Carol sensed my intense curiosity or noticed my bewilderment, but I am grateful that he took the time to provide me with a brief, honest explanation. To make it clear, Petrovich, I need to start from the beginning. I got married for the first time when I was 19. It was that classic school love story that many people talk about, filled with intense feelings. Marina and I even sat at the same desk back in high school, and we didn't care if others teased us. Our love was strong, mutual, and it felt like it would last forever. By the time we turned 19 and became students, we decided to get married. We didn't rush into having children. We wanted to establish ourselves first. Marina's parents left us their apartment and went to live with her grandparents in the village. That very apartment is where Marina and Dima currently live. When you enter the lobby, there are 3 apartments, ours straight ahead and Marinka's on the right. By the time I turned 25, Marina gave me a gift, our son, Dimka. We had both completed our education and started working. Our once passionate love gradually faded, but it hadn't yet become a mere routine. We respected each other, yes, but we lacked that spark. I don't know, maybe if it weren't for Dimka, we might have separated by then. I can't say that I actively sought someone else or had a need to stray. I was simply going through the motions of family life. And then our neighbor, Sveta, moved in. Her apartment is across from Marina's. She was self-sufficient, successful in her career, and even bought an apartment with a mortgage. I was around 33 or 34 at the time, and she was 10 years younger. After she moved here, she approached us as a neighbor, but then we started meeting for salt at Marina's or coffee. She didn't have a partner, so she would come to me with questions like fixing a socket or tightening a faucet, neighborly stuff. I guess she took a liking to me from the beginning, as she initiated our adult relationship. It wasn't as if she had any expectations or demands, and we didn't meet very often. It was convenient for me. She was a neighbor, so I didn't have to go far. Plus, there were no promises between us, so no one owed anything to anyone. After nearly a year of these neighborly encounters, Sveta became pregnant. She didn't hide the fact that someone else was the father, but she didn't hold it against me either. She mentioned that she wanted to have a child for herself before she turned 30, according to her life plan. At that time, Dimka, my firstborn, was already 10 years old when I had my second son, Deniska. Sveta and I agreed that I wouldn't officially register myself as Deniska's father, but I would assist financially as best as I could. I told her that once Dimka grew up, I would tell my wife everything and officially acknowledge Deniska when I obtained the necessary documents. Sveta didn't press me to do anything more. She was fully absorbed in motherhood, and Marina and I helped Sveta in a neighborly way. That's how things went for another 5 or 6 years. Marina was unaware of everything, and Sveta didn't expect more from me. Then the situation changed. Sveta faced difficulties at work and lost her job. She had a mortgage hanging over her head. Someone had to pay for it. Of course, she turned to me for help. But what about me? How could I explain large sums of money to my wife? How could I justify paying off my neighbor's mortgage without raising suspicions? I'm no oligarch, so any significant withdrawal from our family budget would be noticeable. One day, I came home from work, and Sveta was visiting. They were sitting together with Marina at the table, finishing off the second bottle of wine. I knew exactly what was happening, and I was certain there would be a scandal. But surprisingly, there was no typical outburst. Marina, of course, called me a scoundrel for cheating and for not acknowledging the child. Well, you can imagine, Petrovich, the things I heard. And the climax of this extravagant tirade of female reproaches was the word divorce. Marinka declared that she no longer wanted to live with me, that she couldn't forgive my infidelity as a wife. She stated that when it came to our son, we could maintain communication, but a full-fledged family life was out of the question. Sveta expressed that now that everything was out in the open, it was time for me to acknowledge Deniska as my child and pay regular child support instead of sporadically providing her with money. However, Sveta didn't invite me to become her husband or lover. After that, everything went according to plan. I officially acknowledged Deniska as my surprisingly. Anya wasn't at all frightened by Kirill's complex family situation. She immediately accepted the truth about his sons and everything else. Perhaps it was because she had grown up solely with her grandmother and longed for a family, or maybe it was simply due to her kind heart and pure nature. Either way, she started to hint that it was important for the children to have regular contact with their father. Initially, we would only have daily tea calls with our sons, but gradually it became a tradition for us to organize these family dinners every day. Marinka had no interest in seeking another relationship after the divorce. She claimed to be content being alone. Now that her son was growing up, she preferred dedicating herself to her grandchildren rather than washing socks and underwear for some man. Svatulia had tried to pursue relationships a couple of times, but her strong personality was too much for any man to handle. She found herself in a good job again, embracing her role as Deniska's mother and not needing anyone else. Meanwhile, I started off working 3 jobs, then 2, and now I have found one that provides enough money for my children and my wife, Anechka. Within our living arrangement, Marinka and Svetula handle the household chores, while I take on the role of a father, ensuring my sons receive the necessary guidance and support, even if it means sleeping in separate apartments. Everyone is content with this setup. And now we have Matveyka. Can you imagine my happiness, Petrovich? A 3rd son, it's truly a blessing. This is how we live now. Kirill, the tea is getting cold. Anya interrupted, opening the balcony door. Let's go to the table with our guest. Coming, Kirill replied. We'll be there in a minute. We're waiting. Grandma is worried that her rabbits haven't been fed. Anya responded, closing the balcony door before heading to the table. Petrovich, I wanted to ask you something. How much do we owe you for the transportation? Kirill asked in a businesslike manner. I understand that the dinner was enjoyable, but you spent gasoline and your time. And you'll also need to take Istalina Vasilievna back home. You don't owe me anything, I replied with a smile. How come? Kirill questioned, a bit surprised. Just because, I replied, smiling even wider. You've given me such pleasure with your story, something money can't buy. So we're even. You know, it reminds me of one of my favorite movies, Poprovsky Voroda, and a quote from it, high relationships. You all truly have high relationships here. This is the first time I've encountered such a thing in my life. And believe me, I've seen a lot. But can't we at least compensate you a bit? Maybe for the gasoline, Kirill persisted. It's embarrassing. If you really want to spend some money, why not buy candy for your kids and tell them it's from me? I firmly suggested. Thank you, Petrovich. You can't even imagine what Istelina Vasilievna means to Anechka. She blossomed as soon as she heard her grandmother was coming. Kirill expressed his gratitude, extending his hand to me. "Let's go and have some tea." I drove Istelina Vasilievna back to the village in the dark. Throughout the journey, she spoke joyfully about how wonderful Motenka was and how much she resembled her late son. Only on our way to her home did she remember that she had forgotten to feed her rabbits. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. In my life, I have witnessed and heard countless stories, yet there are still tales that astound me. On one hand, it's not surprising or negative that Kirill maintains a good relationship with his ex-wife and the mother of his second child. What truly amazes me is how his current wife accepted and loved him, despite the fact that the mothers of his children live next door. I struggle, as a man, to fully comprehend the depths of a woman's soul and her remarkable capacity for such actions. Once again, I am left in awe of the wisdom displayed by women.